which is 60% water. And we, like all other living things, depend on water for survival. Yet more than 50% of the world's population lives without the most basic water sanitation needed for bathing, cooking, cleaning, and most notably, drinking. We live on an Earth that is made up of 70% water, and scientists are saying that global warming is leading to higher water levels. So how is it possible that we are having a water crisis? Well, the reality is that not all of this water is usable for our needs. 99% of the Earth's water is found in salt water, ice, and other unusable forms, meaning that only 1% of our water is fresh water, and that's shared between all 7 billion of us. We are already using 50 to 60% of our Earth's fresh water, and it is definitely not equally shared. 1 out of 6 people have no access to a toilet, and 1 out of every 8 people searches for clean water on a daily basis. This access has a direct impact on an individual's education, health, and socioeconomic standing, and it's a major source of conflict and migration. Every 20 seconds, a child dies from a water-related illness. This problem with access most notably affects developing countries, specifically located in Sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. Specifically looking at Latin America and the Middle East, what are the attitudes and policies related to water commodification and water preservation? Which of these seems to be more effective? How are these vastly different social, economic, and geographical climates choosing to handle the water crisis? And what can we learn from their efforts in order to address the water crisis on a large scale? Latin America and the Middle East face very similar challenges in terms of the water crisis. Both face colonial pasts and now require new infrastructure to manage their growing population. However, it is the Middle East that seems to be better equipped to manage their water crisis. In understanding why this is so, we must look at 4 factors: water privatization, geographic location, cultural values, and economic development. In the late 1980s and into the 1990s, there was a period dominated by privatization, which impacted Latin America more so than the Middle East, where oil revenue insulated many countries from the need for private cash in the industry. Latin America consequently saw an influx in private participation in the water industry, leading to unequal access to clean water. Thus, as private money flows into the water industry, just as this red dye enters the water, the commodification of water permeates throughout the industry, and the resources begin to be valued in dollars. However, in the Middle East, the oil revenue, represented by this layer of oil, allows public governments to develop the clean water and sanitation and protect it against private money, like this red dye, from entering the water industry and commodifying the resource. Geography is also crucial in understanding the difference between the 2 regions' water access. The Middle East, as a consequence of its very dry and arid climate, sees people settle in areas where there are already existing or easy to develop infrastructure to access clean water, much like the blocks congregate around the Blue Well. Latin America, on the other hand, is extremely large and lush. Consequently, there are large populations living in remote areas on the continent, with nearly 30 million people living in rural Brazil alone. Represented by the colored blocks, we can see that people live far from one another, making developing water infrastructure symbolized by this well increasingly difficult. Culture is also an important element to consider here. The Middle Eastern culture and societal attitudes is heavily influenced by religion. The region is 91% Muslim, with Islam having a defining role in attitudes many have towards access to water. Water is an important part of Islam, referenced over 600 times in the Quran. Many Islamic practices, from prayers to observation of religious holidays, require the availability of clean water, and so water has become viewed as a right within the area. Islam, represented by this crescent moon, is holding the social fabric when wet by placing a cultural emphasis on the importance of it. While there are certain indigenous groups in Latin America who value water as a competent part of social life, the region does not have the same social view towards water as in the Middle East. Thus, the culture and religion of the region have not placed a strong cultural value on water, as represented by this weak paper when wet. Finally, economics plays a huge role. Latin America lacks the economic development we see in the Middle East, where the average income is more than double that in Latin America. A wealthier society is better situated to advocate for their rights and are much more likely to be heard and accommodated. As Middle Easterners are in a better position economically than those in Latin America, They are better positioned to demand access to water and have a government forced to be sympathetic to their cause. The wealthier the society, the more pressure the citizens have to place on governments to continue to provide their basic needs. Much like how the more coins placed on this glass, the more pressure they place on the napkin until it breaks and allows the coin access to the clean water below. Privatization, geography, culture, and economics all play pivotal roles in understanding how both regions tackle the water crisis, with different levels of success. Without understanding why certain regions excel, we cannot come up with an adequate strategy to tackle the issues. The result of these findings have been amalgamated into region-specific art pieces for both Latin America and the Middle East.